So, hello. We are recording. This is Carl. Hi,
Good
Carl.
morning.
Good morning. I met Carl in 2013, right before flying back to New York after visiting Leo. And I haven't seen him since then, and we've just spent the last 4 or 5 days together as long-term, old-time lovers. So it's been nice to get to know Carl. So Carl, I find you quite inspiring, and I want to hear some of your stories. I'm going to ask you some, but you can also tell me any you want.
Yeah, maybe some of the topics will trigger something else.
Yes, exactly. First off, I would like a little bit of your history. So, I believe you grew up on a farm. Tell me a little bit about growing up on a farm.
It was a 250-acre polled Hereford cattle farm.
And did you milk them?
Well, they're almost all males, so
Ooh. Did you kill them yourself?
they would kill one every year or so for meat. But having a farm of that size back there with bluegrass, it was just a matter of putting the calves out after they're weaned out on the bluegrass, and they whine and suffer for a little bit, and then they get down to eating, and they just pack it on.
So your family would kill one cow per year, and then they'd sell the rest, or they'd sell the rest of the bulls.
You have one bull and a number of cows, but you don't sell them all, of course. There were about 100 of them that were on the cycle where they would have calves one year and not the next.
Right. And did you grow any vegetable food to eat on your farm?
Just about everything we ate.
So you pretty much grew everything you ate yourself.
Yes, and I love very much to have a vegetable garden.
Mm. How many people lived on your farm? Like siblings, families, or parents? Did you have uncles and aunts or cousins living there as well?
No, just my parents, and they never went anywhere.
Well, they had to stay and work the farm. How many siblings did you have?
I had two that are alive.
Well, that are still alive. But I mean, when you were growing up working the farm, was it just 5 family members?
That would have been myself and my parents, and then the ones that had already left home.
Oh yeah, you had a large separation of time between you and your older siblings.
20 years.
Wow. So, what age were you when you left the farm?
18.
18. For school?
Yes.
And I guess I talked a little bit about my other German friend that when he left home, he noticed a big shock. Like, did you have a noticeable, like, the food tasted worse, or did your mother make you clothes, or did you wear clothes that you bought?
Usually clothes that we bought. My mother made some of them as well.
But it wasn't like a huge shock because you'd already worn clothes that were made
Right, yeah.
people. And your farm was in Virginia, right? Like rural.
In Shenandoah, yes.
In the beautiful Shenandoah, near the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's a pretty area. And so you left and you went to school, and I believe you got married pretty quickly after going to school, right?
Yes.
And then you had a child, and then you stopped being married, and then you lived in some group homes, or not group homes, but like communal homes.
Yes.
And then you came to the realization you were gay. I guess probably was it still in your 20s or your 30s?
Oh, 20s.
In your 20s, yeah. And you never went back after that?
No. It was full speed ahead.
Some people believe they're bisexual. It works for some people. Um, so you said you've had quite an academic career. So did you get a PhD?
Yes.
Mm. And then you ended up spending the majority of your working life in museums,
Yes.
doing conservation, authenticity, restoration. What
That's about it.
are you an art historian?
Well, I have all the degrees for BS in in art history.
Does that just mean you can bullshit your way through art history?
Yeah. Don't get me down to that channel because I'm very opinionated when it comes to that.
Well, I guess you should be. That's, part of talking about the meaning of people's creations. There's a certain, you got to have a lot of opinion and criticisms. A lot to be said about that.
And a healthy dose of bullshit.
And a healthy dose of bullshit, yes. I know many artists that can't speak about their work at all, so they need people to create blurbs for them. And then all of a sudden their art has meaning. It's not just
right.
Garbage. So that kind of gets you to... we're at your house right now up in Mendocino, which you call Barenheim. You spent time living in the D.C. area, working in the museums there, and then something about Denver I don't entirely understand, but about 10 years in Denver and then San Francisco. And 1 year living in Germany.
1 year living in Santa Monica.
All right.
By virtue of working at the Getty.
Hmm.
And I lived in Atlanta.
Oh.
Doing commercial art.
You mean doing art for companies?
Yeah. This was doing art for billboards, specifically.
You were painting the mock-ups for them, or you were painting the actual billboards?
I didn't work so much directly with the art that they went by. I was more in that job a technician to make sure it all worked. Because those billboards, the images were silk screened.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But you weren't creatively having input on making the advertising images, were you?
Well, once in a while someone asked for an opinion. But I would say for the most part opinions weren't very welcome.
From certain, factions. I'm sure there's way too many opinions going around in advertising. So I just wanted to get a little bit of a background of who you are and were in that respect. But I guess, some things I'm very interested in is, since I saw you last, you said that you were supposed to die, and then you didn't die. You're
Yes.
just like, I didn't die. So you can just talk about that a little bit? Not necessarily about the disease itself, but the experience of believing you're going to die and then just not dying, and what that experience was like.
When one is in the hospital, it's usually at the mercy of hospital staff and your doctor and so on. So I was extremely sick and incoherent, so I got moved to a hospice. And when you go to the hospice, of course, you're supposed to die. And if you don't, I sort of get the feeling that it's like they prod you with sticks.
Hurry up.
So,
Well, so what did it feel like? Did you feel like you were going to die?
well, I sort of accepted their opinion. I thought they must know more about it than anything I could feel. So, but I continued to. I convinced them to keep giving me my meds, and yeah, after a little while, I started to improve. And then they had to put me back in the hospital.
Did you feel a strong urge or will to heal or to survive?
Well, yeah, I wasn't in the mood to die.
You weren't in the mood to die.
I had things I wanted to do.
Like what?
More travel. Enjoy this place because it took so many years to get it here in this condition. So I like to come up on weekends or certain weekends and just enjoy it.
So so then the opposite question about, you were dying is it seems to me like you have had a very vibrant life just from the things that I see. So this house, when you got it, was kind of a shell of a house, and you've turned it into this wonderful house unlike any house I've known before. How many years did you work on this, and did you hire a lot of people, or did you mostly do it with yourself and friends?
Very much with myself and friends, but certain things I didn't do myself or even with companions that were skilled in that area. A good example was electric. I can run Romex and stuff like this, but I don't really feel comfortable, and therefore I don't believe I'm qualified to do that.
Hire a professional.
Yes. So when you hire a professional.
But how many years of working on this house before you felt like it was finished? It's finished now, right?
I'm sure there's something else to be done. I purchased it in 1999 and have been working on it intermittently all the way through to the beginning of this summer.
Oh. Okay. You had made a comment a couple days ago where you're like, I'm not as interested in it now that it's all done.
Right.
Yeah. But you still enjoy being up here, even though it's
Yeah.
not constant projects.
Yes.
And you said most of the years you've had a garden and grown your own food up here, and
Yes, and that was always so rewarding. I just loved doing it.
yeah.
So I'm disappointed that the fenced-off garden area is a bleak
Cemetery right now.
sun-blasted,
Desert.
weed patch.
Yeah. Well, it's important to let your fields lay fallow every once in a while so they can regenerate.
Yeah, well,
So, okay. So I also want to hear a little bit about your community. You don't have to name names, but I find it quite inspiring. You bought a house in San Francisco shortly after you moved there. Is that the situation? Or like right when you moved there, did you buy that house?
See, how does that line up? I bought the house, moved to no, I hadn't bought the house until something's not adding up. Do you want to stop it for a little bit?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, for me, when I know, like, when I was making the video yesterday, when I forget or there's like a blip in my brain, I just sit there and for a moment and let it sort out. So there's no rush. I mean, you don't have to be specific with dates, but
I think I started working on the house in 1999
the house down in San Francisco or up here?
up here.
Uh-huh.
The one in San Francisco was 97.
And is that shortly after you moved to San Francisco?
I probably had worked a couple of years.
So you've been in San Francisco for a couple of years. You found this house, and it's got 4 units or 5 units in it.
4.
When one thinks about San Francisco and interesting living situations like that, one recalls like Tales of the City and that kind of thing. But I mean, you're the daddy of the house. Not that you're the daddy of the house, but you have these people that have been living there, and you kind of, it feels like, I mean, one of them yesterday mentioned that it feels like a family that's been curated by you.
Interesting perspective.
Well, can you just talk a little bit about how you feel about that, as far as does it feel like a family to you?
I'll let it go. Yeah, there are times it feels very much like a family, and then other times the individuals are just going their own way.
Yeah, of course. But I think you said every once in a while, everybody from the house in San Francisco comes up here, and you all eat together.
Well, usually we have a big annual dinner for ourselves in San Francisco. And yeah, I mean, people come up here quite often for the reasons that people like to get away and go to mountain cabins.
Yeah. And are most of your are most of the people in your house artists?
No.
No.
Roderick is something of an amateur artist, but he works for the Ace Hardware. And, well, Gary, of course, doesn't live in the house, but he's often there. But he works for Kaiser.
I'm sure you have lots of satellite members of your tribe.
Yeah. And John, what was it? He told me he was talking to someone else and mentioned what he did, and I thought, well, I've been trying to figure out how to put it for years, and I couldn't figure it out, but that's it. But I forgot.
It's fine. And then I guess the last question I'll have, so we don't keep you on here too long. So you've also been a painter your whole life, right?
Yes.
And did that start very young?
Yes. I could always draw.
You could always draw. And what age did you start working with paints?
Oh, I'm sure. I know my mom got me not oil paints, but this tempera,
Mm-hmm.
and it was sort of like a jelly too. So I think it was because she could clean it up easily, which is practical.
Very practical. But when you were below 10, like when you're still child?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and you said that you have an art studio that you built up here as part of your cabin. The place you do your spiritual practice, your place of worship. But you said you've never sold a painting.
No.
How often do you paint?
I only paint when I feel like it. I'm convinced that if you have other things on your mind and so on, that you can't really perform well. When I was a department head at the museum, and I always insisted that for my students and interns that they not work if they're having a crisis at home or something. Because when you make art, well, paintings in this case, you apply the paint, but it's driven by what's going on inside.
There are a lot of artists I know who really only get their work done when they have a show scheduled.
Right.
And I feel fortunate that in recent years in New York City, I've become closer with artists who work all the time compulsively. And one of them, because his art's like a craft, so he just has to make product all the time for people to buy it. But other two, it's like they can't not be making art all the time. Like one of the German friend of mine, he just goes crazy if he's not making art all the time. Well, he would go crazy if he's not making art all the time.
Well, I know some people like that as well.
You don't have that kink.
No.
I guess that is one more question. Did you grow up speaking German, or did you learn that as an adult?
I learned it. There were some German words and phrases that I was never sure why they were in the language.
In the English language?
Yeah, because in fact they're not in the English language. So they were words that my that my parents used,
Hmm.
but I knew what they meant, so.
Hmm.
No, I had, when I was at William and Mary, I ended up, I had to have pass 2 language tests in order to get a degree. So, and it had to be compatible with what I was working on. So I chose French and Spanish. And
yet you're fluent in German. When did you become fluent in German?
when I was living there, I think it took about 3 months.
Oh, it's because you lived in Germany. That's how you became more
Yeah.
fluent. Okay. Hmm. I don't know. Do you have anything to say about where you are in your life right now?
I wish I knew.
Hmm. Similar with all of us. All right. Thank you. It's been very nice spending time with you again. And
Likewise.
I've enjoyed the time talking and not talking. Just being, I guess,